Hey guys, it is Pack from both Horse Racing Reddit and Horse Racing Discord. With the Saratoga meet now being over, I wanted to kind of go back and do a little bit of a video and talk about two topics that are going to sound like they're not related, but the more I talk about them, the more they're going to become related, and hopefully this video encompasses those two ideas nicely. Two topics that I want to discuss are the idea of paper handicapping or practice handicapping. How I still, even at myself being someone who's handicapped a lot for, and played the horses a lot for the past 10 years, I still use a lot of paper handicapping. I kind of want to show you how I do that. And then how to take, and we're going to get into a little bit of bankroll management, sort of how you use paper handicapping, how you use historical trends in your own handicapping to make yourself a better handicapper going forward. So first off, I want to show you what it looks like when I paper handicap. So this is my book. This is the little red book that a lot of people on Discord will tell you about. A bunch of them have seen it. And I'm going to show you this here. So this is a race. This happens to be Woodward Day at Saratoga, and how I sort of handicap the races. So across the top, you're going to see the date and the track. And then down in the vertical, you're going to see all the different race numbers. I normally break them into chunks. So this was a 12 race card. You're going to see race 1 and then 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the break. And I normally break the pick 4 sequences into chunks that are all together, and then with gaps between. And then you'll see over on the side, I'll have the pick 4, then the pick 5 sequences labeled when they start. And then you'll see I also notate if the race is on turf specifically, assuming if it's not notated that it's a dirt race. And then you're going to see a bunch of slashes and circles and all sorts of other nomenclature. This is my personal way of doing it. Obviously, there's no one perfect system. So for me, when I handicap, I go from left to right. My A's are to the left. Then there's a slash, and then my B's are the next chunk, and then there's a slash, and my C's are the next chunk. You see a double slash, that means I went right from A's to C's with no B's. And what I will do is I will manipulate these around, cross things off, move things around. You'll see an LS on there, that's a late scratch, notated. And then you'll see some horses that have circles next to them. A circle means that that horse won that respective race. And this is how I paper handicap. What I went through is I went through all the races on that day. It was September 1st, so that would have been Saturday. And like I said, that was the Woodward card. And I went through and I capped out the races, and then I can go back and I can see, once I have the results, how my handicapping would have been. Now, why this is really important, and this is why this is important for a newer player, is newer people are not normally going to have as much of a budget, so they can't afford to make as many mistakes. So when you're learning a new track, you can go through and you can handicap. And also for myself, I can go back and I can say, gee, because I have all of my books, I normally do a new book every year, and I'll say, gee, 2 years ago, I was hitting at a higher rate, or I was hitting at a lower rate. So also on there, you'll note I always put a little dot next to a horse's name. That means it had a B+ or better work. And then you'll also see, what else do I have notated on there now that I'm looking? I also have, I have little identifiers. I'll identify things like, was the horse a key race horse? Or was it a horse that I had watched, have a previous trip that was against a bias, and it's a horse I want to bet back on bias means. So those are all things I'll notate on the day. And it just makes it really quick and easy for me to kind of go back to, oh yeah, we're talking about such and such a day. I can just flip back very quickly and play around with the card for that day. Now, one thing that I think separates really good handicappers from handicappers who maybe are more in it for the gambling thrill is that really good handicappers are consistently reanalyzing their data. Now, when the Saratoga meet ended on Labor Day, on a Monday, Tuesday morning, I hop on Discord, and there's about 5 or 6 of us that all got in a channel. We started comparing all of our percentages. We started comparing all of what things we were good at on the meet, what things we were not good at on the meet. And we went back and we were all taking notes for it. Geez, takeaways I need to have from the Saratoga meet. And that's not something we just doing once during the meet. We were doing that on almost a weekly basis. We were looking back at our data and saying, gee, I was doing real well in pick fives this week, but man, my other stats were not good, or somehow I was not, I was missing something, or here are the types of things I was missing, and constantly reanalyzing what's going on and why am I doing better or why am I doing worse. Now, one thing that came out of this, and like I said, I've been handicapping, I bet six figures a year. I'm somebody who, six figures plus a year. I'm somebody who has been playing the horses for a number of years. Consider myself to be a very experienced handicapper, and I had one of the other guys who's a regular, who also has a large budget on Discord, say, hey, why are you doing this? Your opinions are really good. You're not leveraging them right. Try doing this and this and this. And he gave me a little tweak that I used the last, probably just a tweak in how I approach some things that I used the last 2 weeks in the Saratoga meet, and I found my ROI significantly increased on certain types of wagers. So one thing, and when we start talking bankroll management for newer players, we always say focus on your best opinions. What he flagged me for was I wasn't focusing on my best opinions. I was having these great opinions, but I had the mindset that, well, they were included in a pick five sequence, therefore I was leveraging them. And he said, no, use daily doubles and pick threes to emphasize them even more. Started doing that and actually saw my ROI go up quite a bit. So I'm going to kind of peel back my book, and I'm going to show people how I sort of bankroll manage, how I look at what I want to play, and how I structure things. So I've done a lot of paper handicapping. I know these numbers, and I know that certain things that I do well and certain things I don't well, and I'll throw them up here for you. So if you have an ADW, and by ADW, advanced deposit wagering, you're wagering online, and you put money into an account, and it wagers it into normal horse racing, into the Mutel pots. Any of those ADWs have data analytics built into them. You can go back over a period of time, can look at the tracks that you're playing, and you can look at what wagers was I winning on and what wagers was I not winning on. What was I good at and what were I not good at? And so I've taken those numbers and put them up here. And by the way, if you're having problems finding that on your ADW of choice, hop on Discord, ask anybody in noob questions, and we can definitely help you find those numbers within the online wagering account you have. So I'm going to show some numbers here for me. These are my meet numbers for Saratoga. I've taken total wagering amounts out because I don't mind people knowing how much I wager. I'm pretty public about it, but just for this format, I figured it made things a little easier to read. So this is Saratoga. You're going to see that this period of time during the Saratoga meet, 94.36% of my wagering budget was directed at Saratoga. And I had a 13.35% win rate by percentage wagered. So that means that I had a 13 for every dollar, or for every $100 I wagered, I made $113.35 back. And that is a extremely good ROI. I know a lot of people who are professionals who are only making, on their year, they're looking at, if they can make 4 or 5%, they're extremely happy. So my Saratoga meet numbers were quite good, and I was very happy with them. For years, I've really focused on the pick five. It's become more and more influential, and I found that it's just a wager I do well at. So 40.67% of my money wagered went through the pick five, and I averaged a 22.66% return on that investment. I think I had the numbers, I think of the 78 pick five sequences at the Saratoga meet this year, I successfully hit 22 of them. So I mean, good meet, and those are similar stats for me. I'm a roughly pick fives at Saratoga, 30% is about what I hit at. And some of the changes that I made actually increased some other things. Now you're going to look at these numbers and you're going to see all of the wager types here, and all the percentages of my total wagering volume, and then the ROI on those. And some of these are going to make you kind of scratch your head. So one thing that's made people scratch my head when I threw these numbers up on Tuesday was the fact of I made a 22.66% ROI on my pick fives. My pick fours, I lost 91.3% of the money I wagered there. So people are saying, well, do you just suck at pick fours, but you're good at pick fives? That makes no sense whatsoever. Well, let's put it this way. What I actually learned out of this is the fact that I shouldn't hedge. For me, a pick four 99% of the time is a hedge for a pick five. You always have an early and a late pick five at Saratoga, and there's a pick four that is inside that sequence. So for me, if I get an A on the first leg of the pick five, I would play the pick four with the same ticket, so I won't even play it. But if I have a B or a C horse in the first leg, that means that I will normally play my pick four back. If you look at these stats, it shows that I am terrible when I do that. What I should do is, instead of using that pick four sequence as a hedge, what I should do is just put my hands in my pockets and watch the races. Obviously, my hedges are not doing well, and normally it's a situation where I obviously didn't have a great handle on the track that day. Therefore, I missed the first leg, and it turned into me missing the entire sequence, me being off in the entire sequence. I was just wrong, and I was wrong more than once, and it knocked me out. So that's one thing I learned. Another thing I also learned is we all have a bit of an ego. I've always sold myself as being as a horizontal player, and I always looked at my pick fives and said, geez, that's the best way to make money. Well, what's happened with the pick five pots is all this, because it's a low takeout wager. In New York State, it's a 15% takeout of the pot, so it's extremely efficient as a player. The big money has gone to the pick five. And what's happened is the smart money is now there. You can't make as much money in the pick five as you could 5 or 10 years ago. So when you look at these numbers, you're going to see things like my daily double ROI is almost the same as my pick five ROI, and my pick three ROI is 146%. Yes, that is correct. Now it was only 5% of my wagering handle, but I made 146% ROI. So what you can take away from this is the fact that I have kind of learned that I need to move and shuffle some of my wagering. I need to wager more heavily in the daily doubles and the pick threes when I have a strong opinion on a sequence. Obviously, it's a better ROI. I think I have this bit of an ego where I wanted to put up these big pick five scores and kind of, I don't know, bragging about them, gloat about them, kind of say, geez, I won $6,000. Well, winning six $1,000 scores is just the same as winning a $6,000 score. Same exact money, it spends the same. It's not as big and flashy as a number, but it's still ROI. So I've kind of learned that I need to be a little smarter and leverage those opinions. It's something we tell new players. I'm definitely not a new player, but it's still something even I can learn from. And looking back at the data analytics really helps you learn where I wasn't the best at. My pick six number is really low. That's because there were a couple of pick six sequences that were large carryovers early in the meet. I chased them very aggressively. I spent a lot of money in doing so, and I hit one of them, but it was like $1,000 payout. It was a very, very chalky sequence. And you're going to see here, for a very small percentage, I actually did very well with exactas. The reason was there were a couple of sequences at Saratoga where there was a very strong favorite that I felt was almost a guaranteed win, and I only liked one other horse in the race. So I would play a straight exacta, not a box, straight, for like $100. And a couple of times I did that, and I was successful with it a couple of times. It's a very small percentage of my wagering, but I think with this, and I don't like playing exactas, I'm not good at them. But I think if I have the right scenario, I can actually do pretty well on ROI with them. And it's something I've realized it, I've known about it before, but this meet I was much more careful about only playing those types of exacta sequences. So my ROI was pretty decent on a very small, I probably only had, I didn't have very much total wagered in the exacta pools. So here's some, look at how I can come back and I can look at my numbers and I can sort of see what I'm good at. And the reason I did this with this paper handicapping section, if you are somebody who's doing paper handicapping, you're seeing where you're picking winners, or maybe you're saying, geez, every time I have, if I notice that when I do a sequence, I can almost always get the first, second, and third place horses if I pick, 4 or 5. Maybe it tells you something about the wagering type you would be good at. So handicap sequences, do them on paper, come back and look at, gee, if I had actually played this with real money, what would it cost me to play the sequence, and what would my return be on the sequence? And that's how you paper handicap. So, and then that paper handicapping can be turned into what I did here, where you can get a better understanding of what you're good at, what you need to focus more at, and how you need to slightly make little tweaks that can get you more, better returns. I think we all want to have those big, life-changing scores. There's nothing wrong with grinding away at a 20 or 22% ROI if you're finding those sequences and doing the work and enjoying it while you're doing it. So I think that's enough for now. I think hopefully I linked those two subjects. If you'd like to see more on this topic or like to see me break out more sections on it, please throw something down in the comments, and I can break out some more numbers for you here. I don't think most people find math super sexy, but I think when it has some context, it's definitely quite beneficial. And as a handicapper, as somebody who wants to be successful long term playing the horses, I think this is the type of stuff you need to be doing. You need to really do deep dives on each respective track you play, what you're good at that track, and what you're handicapping, and maybe why your handicapping isn't being as successful at that respective track. But until next time, good luck at the races, and have some fun.